I want to say it's like snap judgment on like the odds of things, where like the mathematical computation would take like 30 to 60 minutes in a computer, and a human can just go like, oh, well, it's probably blah.
Oh, because we have probability and we're okay with that, and a computer's all like, no, we must find the answer. It's the answer.
Well, it's trying to sort through just all of the data, where a human's just like, I feel like it's probably blah, and then you're within. You're close enough, but close enough is okay for a human, whereas like a computer's going to be like, what do you mean close enough?
Wow, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel really good. Hey, I'm Armando Leduc, producer, film actor, and owner of Leduc Entertainment. I've chosen a life off the beaten path and wanted to find others that are doing the same. Spaghetti on the Wall is a show based on all of the years that I've thrown spaghetti on the wall and nurtured what stuck. We will share fun stories, ideas, tips, tricks, and more. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this wonderful podcast, Spaghetti on the Wall. Ladies and gentlemen, Denver Gray is in the house. What's up now?
Not much, man. How's it going? It's been a minute since we've had a conversation.
We met at Toastmasters, and yeah, it was that was a really cool group. I'm sorry that it didn't. That it stopped, and it stopped kind of abruptly because it was like going really well.
I can't remember. I think it was because it was volatile to start because it was all entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So it was like 1 week it'd be like 3 people, next week it'd be like 15. It was like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah. It's for sure. Entrepreneurs.
Because you got to get paid, man.
Yeah.
So
and then some people were kind of crazy that were kind of running the group. So
yeah.
Leadership is. Let's talk about leadership. What do you think makes a good leader?
Oh, I broke the rule. I said I think the most important thing is. I always think that when I'm on a mic.
I totally think about that. It's better to just
myself more.
It's better to just stop talking, collect your thoughts, and then go instead of saying or those crutch words.
Yeah.
Like. I say like a lot. What's your crutch word? Do you know?
I don't know. I have enough footage of me, though, to where I could go back and figure it out pretty easily.
Right. I say right a lot, too. I say right and I say like.
One trick I've heard, not to go totally on a tangent, but I used to do this before Toastmasters. I would get Audible, and I would listen to a book, and you can go on Audible, and you can, like, increase the speed you're listening.
Yeah.
And I would slowly increase it to, like, where I could barely understand, but like 2.5 or 3x almost. And I would listen to a book for a while at that speed to kind of speed my brain up. And I felt like I stuttered less whenever I gave like public speaking stuff.
Really?
Felt like my brain was going fast enough to where I had time to think. And so up here I'm stuttering, but I'm talking slower in real life.
That's awesome.
If that makes any sense.
That sounds really cool. It's almost like when guys are running with the parachute behind them.
Yeah.
And so when it's off, then you're just like...
I can't remember who I read that from, though, and he was like, yeah, man, for public speaking, I always listen to something real fast to kind of speed my brain up, and then when I go talk, I feel like I stutter less. And I was kind of like, huh. And I tried that, and it helped
I'm
me
writing it down right now. I love the hacks.
So
I love the hacks.
Don't know if it worked or if it was placebo, but it certainly helped.
But it definitely helped you said.
So leadership, it's got to be on. It's got to be. Leadership, I think it's listening.
Wow. Yes, I think so. I fancy myself a good leader, but not that good of a listener unless I force myself to stop, drop, open up shop. Whoa. No, you know that song?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, But I'll tell you one thing that has really helped me with listening is this podcast. Because I have to set my phone aside. Yeah. I have to focus, and I'm really like doing some active listening. So why do you think listening is the thing?
I think the primary thing with listening is you have to sit back and absorb, and especially if you take the time to really kind of process what someone else is thinking, it lets you kind of absorb or look at an issue from a different angle. Whereas I think a lot of really good business owners and entrepreneurs and people who are doing pretty much like whether it's sports, any pursuit that takes a lot of dedication and focus, you get tunnel vision, I think. So I think the primary thing is like, hey, I'm going to go do the thing. And the only reason that a lot of us are good in the entrepreneurial space is because we have a lot of people telling us that we can't do a thing. And the only way to really be able to do the thing is to just block all that out. But I think you lose a lot when you block too much out.
I heard one time that you had told me you read like, I don't know, 300 books or something.
I try to read a book a week.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on that track. How has that, do you have like a photographic memory, or how are you absorbing that much content?
I'm not.
Are you taking like one thing from a book?
I think every book has like a really good idea in it. And I think one of the things that people don't realize when I say that is I'm listening, because I listen to the whole book. So it's like, remember Ty Lopez? He'd always say I read a book a day or whatever. But I mean, the one time that, that I actually sat and listened to him talk about it, you hear what he said. He says he reads a book a day. Doesn't mean that he finishes a book a day.
Valid.
And his whole point when I asked him, well, what's the deal? He said, well, you can boil it down to a point. So there's really only a couple of points to learn from a book. Because, I mean, a lot of these old, was it Socrates? I can't remember the name. It was like the book I'm thinking or whatever. Just a bunch of his ideas. Mm-hmm. Instead of writing a whole bunch of fluff in between, he was just like bullet, 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 bullet.
Yeah, trim it out.
Yeah.
But that's what social media has become. It's like, get to the point now.
Not necessarily, because you look at Rogan, it's the opposite.
But he's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, but you look at the type of listener I think you get when you have longer formats, the people that are still listening 20 minutes deep, that's a different fan base and probably a better,
the diehard,
a better quality fan base to draw
100%.
value from than someone who listens to the 20 or 30 second clip.
I'm not are you a podcast consumer?
Yeah, I leave it on in the background. I listen. My wife gets driven nuts because when I'm in the car, I don't do music. I don't. I think it's like that's 3 hours of maybe hearing one thing that will change my perspective on something that I'm missing out on. And if I go through enough volume, there's a higher chance I'll find an idea. So, and that's what I was trying to get to earlier. When I say I listen to 50 books a year, I have probably 3 dozen books I listen to every year.
The same?
The same.
Oh, what are those? Let's write those down. Come on.
No, they rotate.
Oh, I got you.
Because I know when I'm listening to a book, I'm not going to get everything out of it.
Totally.
And depending on what's going on in my life, I'm going to draw different things from different parts of that book. But if I feel like a book is a wise foundation of data, I'm going to keep it in the rotation. And if I grow out of something, I'll probably try to throw it back in the rotation in a few years. But like, how many times can you listen to Rich Dad, Poor Dad before you're like, oh, okay, assets, got it.
Yeah.
Buy things that make money when I'm sleeping. Okay. So like that's an example. That's a book where it's like, hey, I'm gonna grab a couple of ideas from this, but it's do we really need to hear the story of when he was little and didn't understand that making money wasn't melting down toothpaste tubes and making coins?
Not after the first time.
Yeah.
Not after the first time, but stories make people remember things a lot quicker than just facts, unless you're different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if somebody can wrap a story around some sort of parable or some sort of tip or trick, I'm gonna remember that. There's a really good public speaking course that I took. I can't remember the guy. However, he talked about how he can memorize an entire keynote speech, and I took it and brought it into my acting. But he talks about like the rooms that you go to in this castle. So if you want to remember
the Thought Castle.
The Thought Castle, yeah. So at the very beginning, the opening, you have the opening of the front door, right? And then as you walk in to the right, the first room is going to be like your first bullet point, the thing that you're talking about. But inside that room, you have to like create a story around what it is that you're talking about, but make it crazy. Like if it's a pink elephant wearing like clown shoes and blah, 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 blah. And that'll, kind of, okay. So then you leave that room and you go to the second room, the third, and I was like, that's a really interesting thought. That really has helped me when I'm trying to cultivate and memorize something. And just like, at what point am I talking about what? It's a fantastic tool, I think, to use when you're trying to like do a keynote speech.
I mean, I've never been able to do the whole memorization thing. That's like it's so hard for me.
It's I used to think it was hard, but then, you know, being an actor since 98, you just, you know, you kind of force yourself into it. But that's the thing. Memorizing just rote, like that's a problem with a lot of beginner actors, is that they'll try to memorize a line, and we're in a scene together, you know, and I'm like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? Hey, there's no feeling behind, hey, how are you? Why am I saying, hey, how are you? What's my moment before? Who are you to me? What's my emotional state? What is, you know, so there's all of this stuff that goes into, hey, how are you? That is not just the words, hey, how are you? And so when you get past just memorizing rote, you'll start putting feeling into, you know, into what you're saying.
Isn't that how they used to write really old, like old school style script writing, as they would write the script without words first?
I don't know that. I'll have to look that up.
I think they used to
where
write,
it's like improvisational.
No, they used to write like the scene and the feeling and the emotion and like what was going on, and then backfill in the actual conversations later to try and get the emotional, like, all right, what's going on in this guy's life and all that other foundational stuff. That way, when they did go back and you had to do line changes and weird stuff like that, you could backfill in and it would still work with the way that the character was built.
Well, yeah. When you're writing a screenplay, you have to know the backstory of each character to understand the voice, and so that when you put that person into that scene or that situation, you understand how they're going to react, right? And I took improv at Upright Citizens Brigade in Los Angeles, and so that's how they talk about how to create character and what you need to come in with, and, you know, like, what is that perspective? You know, get to that perspective as quickly as possible. What's the conflict? Raise the stakes. That's what makes it interesting. And then you move, you know, and then that's how you move the story along. Otherwise, who gives a shit? If things are going well and it's happy-go-lucky, like, nobody wants to see that. They want to see where's the conflict? Why are we fighting? What's the outcome? Where does it take us to? You know.
Have you ever looked at it was like the almanac for Game of Thrones?
No.
Dude, there's a George R. Martin, that's his name. He has like an almanac. It's like, it's not in my head, it's a foot thick, but it's really not. It's like 500 pages or something absurd like that. This huge almanac, and all it is the regions. And then like, oh, well, this region, the trees are like this. And then he goes through all the different tree species, all of the different foods,
really,
all the different seasonalities of the changes of what streams freeze, what freeze over. And like, it's literally a stupid amount of detail.
Did you read this?
I had a Game of Thrones podcast that we drew data from that. We had it I have it somewhere. Let me see, wonder where that book is. But the main thing there was he built that, and I don't know if he built that first, but it was definitely a reference. So depending on what was going on,
he built the world for sure.
Yeah.
Got to.
Yeah, and so I've always thought, okay, that's, you know, who knows how many years of mental dedication and building to then go, all right, now characters.
I'll tell you what blew my mind. I went to, in 2012, here in New Orleans at NOMA, they had an art exhibit called Lifelike. And what these characters did was they created...
NOMA's
New Orleans Museum of Art.
Oh, okay.
And so what these guys would do is they would create everyday, like, objects out of everything that isn't what the object was. So, for instance, this guy made a trash bag, right? That was about this tall, bulging, full of trash, but it was made out of marble. And like, when you looked at it, it looked like a plastic trash bag. I was blown away at the tremendous effort that these guys went through to create all of this stuff. One of the exhibits, you walk through this guy's childhood house that he recreated from finding all of the different appliances, the wallpaper, the floor, the chairs, the refrigerator, and he like went across the country to find these different things to recreate his childhood home that you walk through for art, just art's sake. Just countless hours of doing that just for the art of it. And like, that was so mind-blowing to me at the time, because I was so results driven. I'm like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. Instead of just really focusing on the art of it, just, and just having fun with that. I was just mind blown.
It's funny how you can apply that same issue across so many fields. So it's like art, drama, business as well. At least I know in my businesses, I've always been torn between go all in on one thing and have just stupid amount of detail and quality, or just throughput. How much can I throw out? And it feels like social media is torn between that, because you've got like someone who goes crazy volume like Grant Cardone, and then you've got Mr. Beast who's like one video. What's the right answer?
What is the right answer? I think it's personality-wise. I was reading you ever read the book, The 6 Types of Working Genius?
I have not.
It's great. It's a great book. The acronym is called WIDGET, and it just talks about the different geniuses that we have. You have wonder, people that like are super curious about things or questioning things, and you have invention, people that love to come up with ideas. Discernment are people that are like, super, they can trust their gut, and they can, they have that discernment as to what, if an idea is good or not. Galvanizing is people that are like super good at motivating people and rallying people. Enablement is people that are like good at supporting the whole process. And then you have tenacity. These are people that are like have to see a project get finished, like have to see it cross the finish line.
Oof, people like that get stuck.
Oof. Well, I'll tell you, I think it's one of the secrets to my sauce, because I'm idea guy. I don't necessarily need to see an idea finished, but Melanie and Will, who are, my project manager, COO, it drives them crazy not to see a project get finished. And I think that has been sort of the game changer for me when I brought them on. Because we're actually finishing projects.
I'm similar, but I found a loophole in that if I do, one of my side hustles, I guess at this point it's a business, is real estate. And so if I find a deal, I know that I can finish and figure that deal out in 6 to 12 months, and then I have to find another one. So I have to do another thing after I finish this, and the thing's not like, you're not building out a factory and then you have to do only that one thing for 10 years.
Oof.
You do some people can find a flip and do the whole. I've had real estate projects that last only 2 to 3 months. Then it's like, oh, okay, well, now I'm bored. What's the next one? Whereas if I had to do the same thing over and over, and it would just drive me nuts.
Yeah, it would. But you're an idea guy, though. Your idea, you got ideas for days.
I've never really thought about it, to be honest. Maybe. I like ideas. I don't know that I would give myself credit for new ideas, but I'll read an insane number of ideas, and I'll take parts from different ones, and I'll
maybe
put
you
them
got
together.
the discernment. Maybe that's your genius. Maybe
know.
what works, what doesn't.
I don't know.
You're quick to know. And maybe that's why you're like trying to gobble up all this information.
I'm kind of in the boat of, if you can fail trying to do the same thing 80 times, and you kind of fail forward in the sense that you learn from each iteration, your 100th try is going to be so much better than the one guy who put all his effort. There was I don't know what university it was at, but the professor had split her photography class into 2 pieces. And one side of the class was going to be graded on how many pictures they took in the semester. And the other side of the class was graded on 1 photo. And then she did a qualitative analysis of both sides of the class, and at the end of the semester, the side of the class that took all the photos was vastly better.
100%.
And that was the only difference in the way that she taught them. One was, hey, this is how you do it, and they went and tried 1,000 times or whatever, however many they could do between then and the next class. The other one, the entire time, stressed about, if I don't get this photo right, I'm going to fail.
Why are people so failure phobic? Failure phobic. Can you write that down? I don't know if that's a word, but it should be. Failure phobic.
It should be.
That's the title of my next book, Failure Phobic.
I think a big part of it is people think about them more than they do. Like when you think, when I go to this party, if I'm not dressed the right way, everyone's going to notice. No one cares. Sorry.
It's true. They're more concerned about themselves.
Yeah, if you're like Brad Pitt or somebody like that, then maybe there'll be photos. But in 3 days, people will have forgot about it unless you're spectacularly disheveled. I don't know. My mind immediately went to like 90s Paris Hilton, but
90s Paris Hilton. What happened to Paris Hilton? She's changing. She's going through a whole renaissance.
I don't know.
She's definitely more palatable.
I haven't heard anything about her, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. No, she's did she have a kid?
Oof. Can you imagine?
I don't know.
Like if she was your mom?
I'll tell you this. In my 20s, I did a lot of dumb shit. So, I just didn't have the cameras around me to capture it all.
That's what I mean, though. Just from a parenting aspect, from her perspective, it'd probably be a little more difficult. But then the kids got to deal with every other kid having the internet. Whereas you or I, there's no evidence.
I mean, there's more. I mean, Jenna Jameson, the porn star, she had a kid. That's probably going to be a harder, no pun intended. I'm just kidding.
Edit that one. Okay.
Yeah. But that would be a lot more difficult. But I mean, I don't know, man. The climate is changing. The what's acceptable, what's not changes. So who knows? They're like, hey.
I think in every realm that's a pendulum of what's acceptable versus what's not. We swing real hard one way and then back. And it's like everything's a pendulum. Politics, what's polite, how people dress.
True. So where do you think we're headed now? Where do you think the pendulum is swinging, or has it not swung all the way where it is or where it's going to be?
What was that book? Is the fourth turning or whatever that all the super conservatives were freaking out about? And it was like the last fourth turning was like Hitler or something ridiculous. Or it was like,
yeah.
You know what? It was like popular,
the eras, the different
It's like 80-year cycles, and every 40 years you're at one extreme, and then the next 40 years you're in the middle, and then 40 years after that you're at the other extreme, and in politics cases, right and left, and it's like the right was Hitler and the left was it Mussolini? I can't remember. I don't know the time. I'm not super good with history, but
right. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Either way is bad.
Yeah, no, totally. And here's the thing: it's like the people that are in the middle just get stuck because, they're not really going to one side or another, and then everything just gets influenced by the people that are making those decisions and are steadfast in those decisions. And it's like, dude, come on. I don't know. Maybe AI will change those things. Maybe the fact that we're seeing, what's happening in Australia in real time and what's happening in Africa real time, like shrinks the world a little bit.
My only concern with AI is it's very convincing when it's wrong.
It's very convincing?
When it's wrong.
What does that mean?
Well, because it uses all of these data points. So if it has the wrong opinion, it's going to sound very right about it. So
true. Yeah. What are your thoughts on AI, man?
I think the main thing with AI is there's so much to it. Like, what's it going to affect? I think it'll start out as a tool, and then I think the main issue with it is I think that from a hardware perspective, it's going to be limited on what it can do, because I don't know if we have the computing power. And like, if you use the entire internet, then yeah, it might be sentient or some weird, crazy sci-fi movie thing like that. But if you've only got a computer, is it that useful?
But at the rate that it's learning.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think like it'll hit a wall where it has all of the knowledge, but it can't go through it fast. Like, what was it? I was reading it was an article on the certain computations that AI and computers are bad at that humans can do instantaneously. And I want to say it's like snap judgment on like the odds of things, where like the mathematical computation would take like 30 to 60 minutes in a computer, and a human can just go like, oh, well, it's probably blah. And it's like,
Oh, because we have probability and we're okay with that. And a computer's all like, no, we must find the answer. It's the answer.
Well, it's trying to sort through just all of the data where a human's just like, I feel like it's probably blah. And then you're close enough, but close enough is okay for a human. Whereas like a computer's going to be like, what do you mean close enough? I need to know the answer. And it's like,
there is no answer.
Like, calm down, bro.
Wow. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel really good.
So I think AI will be a great tool.
Yeah,
and I think
it is most definitely a great tool.
I think it makes the expertise and knowledge of a person more important because if you give the tool too much power, you're going to use it for the wrong things, and you'll be very confident about making the wrong decision.
Write that down. So you're in the real estate game. Were you always into real estate, or was it something that you were like, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad and you were like, this is what I got to do?
No, my family's always been in business, and it was funny because when I was younger, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he started talking about all this wisdom that you're supposed to learn if your family is in or good at business or whatever. And I was like, I didn't learn any of this stuff. What are you talking about?
Really?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, if you're good at money, I was like, well, I mean, if you're good at creating an income, that doesn't mean that you retain the income, because I mean, wealth is what you're left with. Right. So I know a lot of people with insanely high incomes that are broke.
Yeah. Dude.
Yeah. It's like
crazy.
Yeah. If their income stopped for 2 or 3 months, they would just everything gone.
It's mind blowing to me.
Insane.
Yeah. Those people that I see and I'm all like, this dude just bought another car. This dude just bought another car. Like, why did this dude just buy another car? Insane, man.
Yeah.
I thought about that too. I was like, man, what do I want to spend my money on? I guess that's the thing, right? Like maybe that makes that person happy, although that's, kind of shitty if it's material things that make you happy. Some material things that you get can foster happiness, but like shouldn't be the thing that makes you happy, right?
I don't know if I got it from him and Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, but maybe it was that book. Is that the book where he talks about wealth is the number of months you have before you're out of money? I think it is.
No, I don't remember.
So I've always measured in my head, all right, how many months do I have? And at a certain point, I would consider someone wealthy if it was just unlimited.
Right.
Right. Whereas I'd say someone's like rich or well off if they can just buy anything they want, but they're not necessarily wealthy if, I don't know, they were in the hospital for 2 months and suddenly their house and all their cars were repossessed. Whereas if you've got, let's just say, money in a S&P 500 index and you're making 2%, if that 2% dividend every year covers all your stuff, you've got a whole lot of money, but you're not really spending much, but the 2% covers all your stuff. So if you were hit by a bus and in a coma for a year, you'd wake up, you probably have more money.
Probably. That's a good call. You should, where are you putting your money these days? In real estate?
I like real estate, but it's because I have a very strong understanding of my personal market and the properties I'm working on. I know what things are worth and how to change that. It's kind of like if you own a business, like you know exactly how to make Leduc Entertainment worth more. You know what levers to pull, what deals or contracts you need to close. You know exactly what to do to make your business worth twice as much next year.
Right.
Right. It's similar with, and you buy a rental property. If the rent is, if the net income from the property is $1,000, and I put in a whole bunch of work and figure out what to do with it, and then next year it makes $2,000, probably doubled my equity. Ish. I mean, there's more to it than that. But
sure.
You know how to affect the value. Whereas if you buy, I don't know, one share of SPX from Vanguard or whatever, and like you can't do anything to make that worth more next year, other than put more in it. Which is fine if you don't want to be active and you want to not think about it and you want to be very passive about your investments. That's totally fine. But a lot of entrepreneurs prefer investing in things that they have leverage, and you have a huge advantage over a more passive investor. And I like real estate because it's kind of a combination where you can kind of have an idea or a concept for something. And if you, let's say you buy a property, you know it's going to cover its bills and it's not going to make as much as it could, but now you have control of it and you're going to save up the money to improve it in a couple of years. You know that you can take that money in a couple of years and improve the property and have a huge outsized return. You can do the same thing with your business. Whereas, I don't know, I don't like the idea of being passive about an investment. I mean, maybe it's because I'm younger. Maybe when I'm like 80, I'll be like, I don't want to think about this.
Right. Yeah, you just want to invest. So obviously real estate, are there any other investments that you see you're like, oh, this is, this is worthwhile, or at least looking into? Like, what are your thoughts on crypto?
Mm-hmm. I see it as a potential game changer on exchanging value over borders and used as a functional, basically piece of software in banking and maybe organizing stuff. But I don't see it as itself as having value. I don't have any money in it, and I wouldn't put any. I'll accept it as rent.
Will you?
And then I'll turn it into dollars. Just because, I mean, if I accepted it as rent, I'd probably end up on the news and I'd fill my units up faster. But
that's a good idea.
But like which one's gonna have value?
Yeah, which one? I don't know. Maybe Bitcoin.
Yeah, probably Bitcoin. But is that because we all know that one?
Yeah, I mean,
is Luna better? Is, I don't know, Litecoin? Like, I literally don't know any of the coins other than Bitcoin.
You can just say whatever coin and it's probably in existence, like wall coin or table coin.
I saw
podcast coin.
I saw a video a little while back, and a guy made actually made a coin. He like literally cut and pasted all the code for Bitcoin, and then he just made it. It was like, let's just call it Joe Coin, and then he traded one to his friend, and he said, "Hey, pay me $1 for this." And he had like 3 trillion of them. He's like, "Ha, I'm a trillionaire." So like the market cap of the value of each of them is $1. He has 3 trillion of them or whatever, because one changed for $1. The last exchange value goes across all the value of all of them. In theory, now the coin's market cap is. So it's kind of like so easy to manipulate.
And that's the problem.
And so I don't know which coin is like that coin and is not like that coin. Like, and for me to trust it, I'd have to go and learn to be a programmer and then dive deep into it and figure out which one's legit. And the idea that everyone's done that. So it's just kind of like, this is a grand experiment. Let somebody else do it. If they're going to use it as a medium of exchange and I receive that as rent in 20 years, so be it. But I feel like most people are going to just lose their ass on it.
Because people are they need a place to live. They need to eat.
Yeah.
They're going to die. Right? So you can count on those. Those are probably good investments to make, right?
I've heard the funeral business is good.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure. I mean, people have to die. So, you got. I mean, I guess that's where you should be thinking is like, okay, in the future, 5-10 years from now, where are people going to be, and what are the needs going to be for those people, and how do you create?
So this kind of brings me to one of the few tenets that I think is pretty lasting, and I think it was, speaking of ridiculous references, Nassim Taleb. He's a options pit trader from New York who became a professor at NYU, I think. And he wrote this book called Black Swan. You probably heard of a Black Swan event. He didn't come up with the term, but he like repopularized it as far as I know. But in his book, what's the name of the book? I think it was Anti-Fragility. He has this concept where he goes over a cafe on Broadway, in New York. It's called the Lindy Cafe. And Broadway stars would sit at the Lindy Cafe and talk about what shows they thought were going to make it. And I believe the story goes that they figured out that you could expect a show to last for about as long as it's existed. So the show with the longest tail on it would probably be something like Shakespeare. How long has Shakespeare been around? I don't know, like 400, I don't know how many years, 400 or
Yeah,
500, or a
something
long
like that.
time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And so you can assume that it'll last twice that. Whereas if this is the first day of a show, you can expect it to last one day. So if a show's been around 2 years, it might last 2 years.
Huh.
And so the period of time something has existed, it's kind of like technology. His whole thing was, if we step back, we can start looking at technologies like this too. How long will axes exist?
Axes?
To bring,
Like to bring a
Yeah.
tree down?
Yeah.
Long time.
How long will your current cell phone be useful?
My current cell, yeah, not.
So an axe is highly lindy, whereas your current model cell phone is not. So if you look at businesses and business types and ideas, you can then say, all right, well, what business idea or median is lindy?
Marketing's always going to be the thing.
But the median through which it's expressed
Right. Will change.
will change, because obviously Facebook's more lindy than Rumble or whatever. So I kind of look at things through that lens.
That's cool.
If that's
I'd never thought about that. I love this. That's why I do this. That's why I do spaghetti on the wall, because you never know what you're gonna think about. That's a really cool way to think about,
so real estate. Let's bring back full 360.
Sure.
Full circle. We'll back food. Very lindy, obviously. Humans haven't figured out how to not have food yet.
Right.
Dwelling, real estate. I mean, what else?
Death and dying. Yep.
Yeah, all three of the things all those things aren't going anywhere. So businesses in those areas have a good chance of creating revenue. Now, obviously, restaurants no, but let's say you provided food to restaurants. So like a farm. Farms are pretty lindy.
Right.
I don't know if farms are very profitable anymore because these big corporate conglomerates, but
Yeah.
so I don't know. I kind of look at stuff from that perspective, and it kind of helps me say, all right, well, if that idea truly lindy, obviously farming, questionable. Restaurants, you can see flaws there. Real estate, pretty lindy.
Right.
What doesn't make money in real estate is, what is not lindy is speculating. Let's say you buy a deal and you're
As to
like,
where these things are going to blow up.
oh, hey, I'm going to hold this. It's going to lose money for 5 years, and then it'll be worth more. That's not a super reliable. Whereas if I buy this and it makes me money every year, and I don't care if it's worth more or less in 5 or 10 years, because it's going to make me cash flow, then that's a more durable idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not paying into it to keep it.
Now, where the big risk versus big reward in real estate, I guess it would be like speculating as to where the new neighborhood's going to be, like Austin. Had we known Austin was going to blow up the way it did,
The less lindy an idea, the more profit there probably could be.
yeah,
Because the more proven something is,
everybody's in it,
yeah,
and there's more,
Yeah.
more mouths on it. But
yeah.
if there's less people in there, it's more risk, but then there's more reward.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have any? Do you like those kind of deals, or no? You're just more conservative in that approach.
I think it's a mix. I think if you're in a situation where you can create a good foundation of, like, let's say Leduc Entertainment blows up and you've got 5 studios. You're just cranking it out. You're representing entrepreneurs and actors and stuff all over America, doing marketing. You're doing movies and all this production stuff. And then someone says, "Hey, would you like to experiment on opening a theater in this location? Business you've never tried before, and it's only going to cost you 5% of your net worth." Probably more open to it than if someone came to you tomorrow and said, "Hey, would you bet everything on a theater that's going to, if it doesn't work, will totally bankrupt and erase everything you've done so
Right.
far?"
No. Yeah. Makes sense.
So I think it's important to create a strong base, which if you look at a lot of entrepreneurs are financially independent and free. So I want to say it was, what's his name? Bald dude from that pitch show on
Kevin O'Leary.
I want to say it's O'Leary. I wanted to say Bacon. It's not Bacon. But yeah, Kevin O'Leary created a pretty strong foundation. From what I understand, he lived with a bunch of roommates when he was in college because he bought a house, rented out the extra rooms, and then when he sold the house, he had a foundation of cash to then make moves. So he created a foundation that gave him extreme flexibility to then go and take bigger risks. So let's say you run Leduc Entertainment for 5 years, build up enough cash to buy, I don't know, let's say somehow you got together $10 million in SPX. I don't know what it's paying right now. Let's say it's 3%. So you're making $300K per year. So you have $300,000 guaranteed income from just that one S&P 500 index investment. You're going to feel pretty comfortable going and saying, this idea is interesting. It probably won't make any money for 2 years, but let's give it a shot. Whereas if you had to make that decision today, and so you're looking at people like Musk and a lot of these other guys, they're doing that to an extreme where they're independently don't need the money, but they're willing to live on a couch while they're making $1 million a year passive from all their other investments.
Sure.
And put 99.9% of all their income into something. Just because they can lower their expectation of what level of life that they're okay with. That, like, I guarantee Elon doesn't give a crap about where he lives in that weird box house. And because he's willing to accept such a low level of day-to-day life, because he doesn't view that as important, he has this stupid amount of flexibility.
Right.
Whereas most people are like, oh, well, I gotta keep 3 cars. They build up this huge house and all these other expenses and stuff, and they're trapped, and they can't. They don't have the flexibility to make moves because they trap themselves with their own financial decisions.
Unfortunately, that is the case.
And
that is the case. And then they get in debt in order to live that lifestyle.
And no one thinks it's a problem because it's normal.
Got to change the conversation. Denver. Fantastic. I love it so much. You have a really good brain. Look forward to seeing more of your content. Look in this camera and tell people where they can find you if they want to follow you on on your platforms.
I just started a YouTube channel. It's called Ned Talks, I believe. And I've also got an Instagram, Ned Talks. It's Ned__ Talks, because I haven't sorted out. I haven't followed Armando's advice yet and got them to have the same name. But I need to put links between them so you can get it between them more easily. But yeah, it's going to be Ned Talks is going to be my YouTube channel, and I'm going to basically just talk about general hacks on trying to improve financial decisions.
I love it.
Stuff like that. So
I've already picked up a couple of things that I'm going to take with me and focus on. So thank you so much for being on the show. And that was our show, ladies and gentlemen. Spaghetti on the Wall, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment. For all of your social media, digital marketing needs, we got you. And you can watch Spaghetti on the Wall on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where you can catch a podcast. And we'll see y'all next week.